Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar today. The topic for today's webinar is Sharing Solar Benefits with Multifamily Renters, a Mississippi case study. And we have an excellent panel of guest speakers with us today. But before we hand it off to them, I'd like to go over a few webinar logistics. We are using a newly updated version of GoToWebinar. If you have any feedback for us, you can put it in the post-webinar survey after the webinar. All attendees are in listen-only mode, so your webcam and microphone are disabled. If you'd like to submit questions and comments, you can do so via the questions panel, and we encourage you to do so throughout the webinar. Don't save your questions till the end. And speaker bios, if you'd like to read them, are available in the materials section on your webinar panel. And finally, automated captions are available. Lastly, this webinar is being recorded. We will email you a webinar recording within 48 hours. It will also be posted on the CEG website at cleanegroup.org/webinars. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to our host for today's webinar, my colleague Seth Mullendore.
Thank you very much, Zareen, and thank you everyone for joining us today. It's a really exciting topic. I'm going to do a little introduction for those of you that are not familiar with Clean Energy Group. We are a national nonprofit organization. We work across the country to try to help enable affordable, reliable, clean energy for all. Within that work, we have four main kind of focus areas of the work. One's climate resilience and community health. The other is distributed energy access and equity. We also work on energy storage and flexible demand to help enable a greater clean energy transition, and also the equitable replacement of fossil fuel assets to clean alternatives. Next slide. This webinar today is brought to you by our Resilient Power Project. The Resilient Power Project is focused on enabling greater access to solar and battery storage in historically marginalized communities. Mostly what we do a lot of is trying to work with groups to help them realize their goals of running more resilience, so more backup power, clean, resilient alternatives for community serving institutions. We also work on enabling policies and programs and related areas such as workforce development. On the next slide, this project has been going for about 10 years now, and a big component of that is our Technical Assistance Fund, which is a program where we work specifically with mostly with community-based organizations, community-serving institutions, to help them through the pre-development phase of figuring out a community-serving solar and energy storage project to provide resilience to keep essential community services up and running. We've worked with around 200 partners across the country in most states and territories as well. And we have over 60 projects that have been installed throughout that time. And we are celebrating a lot of milestones with that program in our 10-year anniversary. So be on the lookout for more resources of that. You can find out more information on our website as well. With that, I would like to introduce our panelists for today for this webinar, sharing the solar benefits with multifamily renters, which I know is a very big topic, particularly with Solar for All funding and with the role of multifamily affordable housing and using solar to help lower affordable housing resident bills. So we have three great speakers with today. We have Aliya Bagewadi, who is the U.S. Director of Strategic Partnerships at Allume Energy. She leads the company's expansion to unlock rooftop solar for apartment renters across the U.S. And then we are going to have Jennifer Welch. She is the CEO and founder of Vesica Real Estate. She started her property management company in 2006 and has brought over 200 residential rentals, has bought over 200 residential rentals in the Belhaven Heights Historic District in Mississippi, many of which went through a total renovation process. She's got several offices now and manages over 100 residential rentals. And finally, we have Alicia Brown, who is the director of Georgia Bright for Capital Good Fund, which is a nonprofit community development financial institution. It is a first-of-a-kind solar leasing. They run Georgia Bright. Georgia Bright is a first-of-a-kind solar leasing program for low and moderate income families, which was made possible thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act's direct pay provision. And prior to that, Alicia served as part of the Mississippi Public Service Commission, where she led the first U.S. deployment of Allume Energy's SolShare technology for low-income housing property, which you're going to hear a lot more about today. So if you want to learn more about our presenters today, please do check out their bios. But with that, I am going to turn things over to Aliya.
Hello. I hope you can see me. I hope this is working. If not, just let me know. My name is Aliya. I'm very happy to be with you all today. Thank you so much to Seth and Zareen for making this happen. So just to give you an explanation of how we'll sort of handle or run this conversation, what we first want to do is show you a video that we put together of the project that we'll be discussing, just to provide more context so that you can hear from the tenants as well. And hopefully that'll give a good background for what we'll go into. So I will first hopefully quickly give you a rundown of our technology and how it really unlocks rooftop solar for multifamily residents. And then I'll pass to, I think, really the stars of this event, Jennifer, who is the building owner in this project, and Alicia, who put the project together. And then we'll pass it back to you, Seth. So maybe what we can do now is actually just show the video.
And at least for today, extremely dangerous heat is expected to continue across the area, with afternoon heat index values ranging from 105 to 120 degrees. As a result, an excessive heat warning is in effect until 9 this evening.
Window AC units are really common around here, and that's really where you start to experience issues with your energy bill. So they're just so inefficient. Right now, as you're talking to me, this is a comparatively cool day in Jackson, Mississippi with a high of 92. Over the past 3 or 4 days, it has been over 100 degrees with a heat index even higher than that. So air conditioning access is a life or death issue here, especially for more vulnerable populations. Energy bills can get out of control in the summer. Air conditioning has to work extra hard to keep up, and that really drives energy costs out of a range that many people can afford.
Allume Energy is comprised of a number of very mission-driven individuals who care a lot about energy equity. Our goal is to see a world in which everyone can benefit from the sun and energy from the sun. So our main focus is to ensure that apartment renters similarly get the benefits of rooftop solar just as single-family homeowners do. We are doing that through our breakthrough world-first technology called the SolShare. The SolShare is the first technology that enables renters in multifamily buildings to directly consume rooftop solar.
I'm an IT specialist, computer analyst, streamer, photographer, all that good stuff dealing with technology. Now I've been renting with Bellhaven Residential for about a little bit over a year. My average energy bill is probably about $135 when I started renting here. I know when it was first implemented, the energy bill was like $78 the first month. I'm like, oh, hey, let's go get a steak. let's go get something to eat real quick. There's a big plus for a realtor to have tenants come to their properties. There's definitely an advertising point.
As I was thinking about who all needed to be involved in this project and the opportunity, I reached out to Dominica Perry with 2C Mississippi, and she said, you need to meet Jennifer Welch. And I realized that she was a landlord who cares about her tenants, was willing to try something new, wanted to have that economic development impact and publicity impact for Jackson. And Jennifer said, yes, let's do this.
They came to me because they knew I was a local investor. They knew that I purchased things and held it for 10 and 20 years. So would I be interested in investing in technology for that long-term benefit to the tenant? And after I became more educated about it and talked to my tax accountant about it, with tax incentives, accelerated depreciation, there were things that made sense, both in terms of the tenant, which I'm always thinking about their needs and their budget requirements, and in terms of me as the investor, it was a win-win situation.
The SolShare opportunity, when brought forth to us with the idea of our DOE solar innovator at the time, Alicia Brown, and what she wanted to pursue and help bring forth and identify a really cutting-edge technology, and those that live in multifamily units can benefit from distributed generation technologies such as solar, and return those benefits back to them so they have more money at the end of the month and increase their economic standing overall, as well as create a more valuable property for the property owner.
With the SolShare, where the tenant can get the energy benefit, the landlord can set up a financial arrangement, kind of like we've done here at Belhaven, where it's just a small rent surcharge, basically like a solar addendum on your lease, where you have the opportunity to opt in or opt out. But if you opt in, the savings you're going to see on your energy bill exceed what you'll be putting towards the capital cost of the system. And it's a really innovative solution to a problem that has been a pervasive issue from the beginning. So the SolShare is designed to serve up to 10 apartments at once, and can also serve common meters on the house. It has a AC output limit of 16.4 kilowatts, so if you wanted to give each apartment more solar, you could use multiple of these boxes, but we could give them a bigger allocation and get their bills even lower with the second one of these boxes. This is homegrown energy right here in Mississippi, harvested from the sun.
At first, when I was scouting apartments, I had never really considered that on my list of things to look for. But when I spoke with the people here and they were telling me, okay, we can help with your energy bill with solar panels, I was like, well, that's pretty cool. I don't have to worry so much about factoring in, because the energy bills do fluctuate. So you can put aside an amount, but when it exceeds that amount, that's super stressful. Since I'm saving money on my utility bills, that allows me to invest back into my small business or put it in my savings account. It was a selling point for me because I am environmentally conscious and I do like to watch my carbon footprint, and having a building that also shares that value is important.
My experience with SolShare from a property manager standpoint has been very exciting. I think that there is a new wave of people who are being very self-conscious about their environmental impact, and it's gotten them talking and just a little bit happier to live here if they already are here, or to move here if they aren't. So I would definitely recommend the solar sharing to just about any investor.
If you are interested in sharing solar in your building for your tenants, or you are a renter who also wants to bring this to your building, and or a local leader in your community who wants to support energy equity, please contact us and we would be very happy to talk to you about how we can bring the SolShare to your community. Okay, well, thank you for showing that, and hopefully you can get a good sense of the impact of the project, and what it's had on the tenants, and also the kind of work that was involved with by Jennifer and Alicia to get that project going. So I would ask Zareen if you can put the slides up again, just so we can quickly go through the technology, and I'll pass it to Jennifer after that. Thank you. So the next slide, please. So there is an energy equity issue happening right now in which single-family homeowners have unprecedented access to rooftop solar. There are incentives, tax credits, additional state renewable energy credits, all sorts of programs to help single-family homeowners go solar. And they're able to significantly save on utility bills. But that isn't the case for people living in multifamily buildings where 40% of the population lives. So to give you a sense of that disparity, California, for example, where I'm at currently, has the most solar in the United States. About 20 to 30% of all single-family homes have solar on them already. But in California, less than 1% of apartments have solar on them. So that disparity is much worse in other parts of the country. Next slide, please. So why is this the case? To talk about the historic barriers for multifamily solar, a big issue has been the split incentive problem, where asset owners, building owners will be making the investments, but the benefits typically flow to tenants in the form of lower utility bills. So there's been a long-standing question for asset owners of why do it, you know? Secondly, in order for tenants to, historically, in order for tenants to consume solar, you needed to have separate solar systems for every meter in a building, which is a lot of equipment and it's very expensive. Third, building owners may be drawn to pursuing solar for sustainability reasons, but they had no way of tracking or knowing how the solar was actually contributing to their sustainability goals. And lastly, the only other option historically has been community solar, which is a billing mechanism that's reliant on policy, but that policy doesn't exist in 20 states. Next slide, please. Oh, and sorry, you can see here what it looks like if you have multiple solar systems per unit. Sorry, next slide. So why is this a problem? So multifamily residents on average face much higher energy burdens than single-family homeowners. So if you are an average single-family homeowner, you're spending about somewhere between 3 to 5% of your income on utility bills. But if you are a low-income multifamily renter, you may be spending upwards of 20% on your energy bills. So that's forcing families to make some very tough decisions about whether to keep the lights on or the air conditioning running or pay for groceries and medicine. So there's a cycle of energy poverty that, in particular, in for low-income multifamily renters can get trapped in. And so the income savings of clean energy are not readily flowing to the people who can benefit from it the most. We're also missing out on a huge potential to support carbon emission reduction in densely populated areas. So in other words, entire communities are really being left out of the clean energy transition, which is really contributing to an environmental justice and inequity problem. And lastly, without equal access to solar, multifamily residents are more vulnerable to grid outages without access to distributed energy resources. Furthermore, they're also more vulnerable to electricity rate increases. Next slide, please. So we are focused on unlocking rooftop solar for multifamily residents with the aim that you heard in the video and that you see here that of ensuring that multifamily residents can gain the same financial benefits of solar that single-family homeowners have had. Next slide, please. So what is SolShare? So SolShare is a smart hardware that is controlled by software. And this software enables the building owner and tenant to view the renewable energy distribution in the building so that they can understand and have peace of mind that, yes, this form of renewable energy is saving on energy bills. And what's unique about the hardware is that it connects multiple meters to a single rooftop solar system. Next slide, please. So how are we solving for some of these historic barriers? So what our system does, as I mentioned, is share energy between multiple meters in a building. So that means sharing energy between the building owner's meter and the tenant meters so that both can lower their energy bills. We are getting rid of the need for multiple systems by sharing energy from one system, making things more cost effective. And our technology critically is tracking the data on a unit and building level. So building owners can report on tenant emission reduction and also be compliant with legislation that's coming, as well as financing that they may be receiving from programs like Solar for All or the GGRF. And critically, our system is privately owned infrastructure, meaning that it's not reliant and is cushioned from policy changes from utilities or state-driven community solar programs. Next slide, please. And I'm sorry to Zareen, who I think is doing the slideshow. If you can go back one slide. So here you can see what it looks like to connect 20 units to two SolShares. So you can see there's a significant less amount of equipment and a lot less space that's required as well. Thanks, Serene. I'll quickly walk you through how this actually works. So here's a diagram to explain how how SolShare functions. So taking a single rooftop solar system, the energy from that system goes down, hits an inverter, and then reaches the SolShare. And then the SolShare is actually physically pushing those electrons to multiple meters in a building. And it can do so in different ways. It can allocate that energy in different ways, depending on the building's needs. So if a building owner wants to send more energy to one unit because of square footage or whatever the reason, that we can send more energy to one unit. We can also work to max out the common meter, so the building owner's meter first, and then send excess energy to the tenant meters, or do the opposite, where we max out energy to the tenant meters and then send excess energy to the common meter. Any energy that hasn't been used can be sent back to the grid in exchange for credits. But really what we're trying to do is maximize the consumption of solar within the building. So this is a behind the meter solution, meaning that, again, it's customer owned infrastructure. The utility does not need to create new programs or billing mechanisms for this technology and setup. And it's connected centrally at a central meter bank, meaning that it doesn't require invasive installation on the building. Next slide, please. I'll let Jennifer speak to, from her perspective, from as a building owner, but for tenants, the SolShare can lower the utility bill for tenants. So we have seen 40% reductions for tenant utility bills, which really makes a major impact to alleviate the weight of energy burdens for many families. It also allows tenants to know and feel that they are lowering their carbon footprint and are also partaking in the clean energy transition, which we really need. We really need everyone to feel that they are part of this transition and are contributing to it positively and benefiting from it as well. And tenants can also have greater visibility into their energy usage with the portal and can be assured that they are indeed saving on their energy, on their utility bills. So I will stop there and I will pass to Jennifer to speak from her perspective on her experience with the Mississippi project.
All right, thank you so much. So I was asked to come to you guys today to share with you some very specific things about the project that I implemented in Jackson, Mississippi. I did decide to implement this project at a 10-unit apartment complex, which is located in a historic district. And so in March of 2021, Dominica Perry with 2C Mississippi came to me and asked if she could introduce me to Alicia Brown, who at the time was a Solar Innovation Fellow at the Mississippi Public Service Commission. And when Alicia and I met, she shared with me that she had already formed a lot of partnerships with Allume and Entergy, our utility provider, and the Mississippi Development Authority in order to really create this comprehensive package to an investor. I will say that in the beginning, I thought that this was a bit of a hard sell because we were going to have to, as owners of this property, going to have to make a significant capital investment that would hopefully benefit the tenant. So I did understand that there were some pretty significant hurdles in order to adapt to this project or implement it. So there was a lot of consideration that went into factoring in all of these things. But I was curious about it, and Alicia shared if we were successful in implementing this, that it really would be a very progressive thing that would incentivize other landlords and investors to do it nationally. And to be honest, I am a homegrown Jackson Mississippian, and I just wanted to think about Mississippi being in people's minds as being progressive and something that was really positive. I think Jackson has struggled with, issues around crime and issues around our water infrastructure that hit national news, and to be on the forefront of something that was important to me, which is climate change, and be progressive in this manner just really meant something to me. So Vesica Real Estate is a local company that is focused on impact investing, which means that we find investors who want to invest in our shared community, and we aim to reinvest our tenants' money back into the area where they live and pay rent. We are long-term investors, and so we do consider future generations of tenants as we make investment decisions. Alicia felt we were a really good candidate for this program, and that we would be able to stay with this project for 5 to 10 years so that we could continue to be a case study and provide the public good information about the project. And so I wanted to take it to my leadership team and propose it to them. And when we met about it, we came up with 3 compelling reasons why we were interested in moving forward with this project. So we understand that electricity is an important but costly utility to run a household, and demands on the infrastructure are anticipated to increase, which will increase the cost to the user, which is our tenant. As we consider the holistic financial picture of our tenants, we know that money spent on utilities might mean less money available to pay rent. So if we invest in ways today to offset the future utility cost increases, then we might protect our ability to increase rents and maintain our historic NOI benchmark. This is increasingly important in today's environment because we are seeing rapid increases in the cost of insurance and a rising cost of debt, which is putting a negative squeeze on our cash flow. And so in order to continue to acquire properties or do the good work that we've done, which is reinvesting back into our community, we have to be conscientious about what's going to happen 5 and 10 years down the road. The second thing that was compelling was we do feel a genuine concern for global warming, carbon emissions, and climate change. We all have young children, and we're thinking about the second and third generations of people after us. So utilizing more solar energy to power a home could be a significant long-term positive impact on those very concerns. And if we could, by executing a solar project and being a case study, encourage other investors to install this equipment at their own properties, then all of us collectively could significantly change the consumption patterns of fossil fuels of hundreds, the use of fossil fuels of hundreds, if not thousands, of smaller households. And 3, if we invest in technology that benefits our tenant's overall financial picture, this helps the tenant be a very stable part of our community. Their money saved on the power bill will likely be spent or reinvested in the local community in meaningful ways. So to summarize, this investment did fit our values and our long-range plans. And so that really meant that we moved into the second phase of project planning, which was to find out if we could finance the project and make it make sense at a cost investment or a cost analysis. So I did engage my tax advisor, Burns Easy, to assist me in a cost analysis. Alicia felt that the project was going to cost me for these 10 units $60,000 initially to install the equipment and labor. And we use that number to come up with this cost analysis. And what was reported back to me was that if my federal tax rate of 25% remained the same over the foreseeable future of this LLC, then we could increase rent by $13.50 per month and pay off the equipment in 18 years. What we know is that the equipment could last much longer than that, and that there is a possibility that the tenants would benefit from a buyback incentive. So we knew that they would most likely receive a $20, at minimum, $20 reduction of their energy bill, but that they might be able to sell back additional power to the grid. Other incentives that Alicia shared with me was that there was an energy rebate for $6,500. This was in order to share information between my solar equipment and Entergy so that they really understood very intimately how much power people were using that was solar power versus their power, and they could just have a lot of good information about this equipment. And then there was the potential for the accelerated depreciation on the equipment. And then one thing that was very compelling to me was that Alicia had found this energy efficiency revolving loan fund through the Mississippi Development Authority, which would provide me a loan at 1.25% over 6.5 years. So after I installed this equipment, my monthly note on this equipment is $743. So I'll go into some of the details around execution. So in March of 2021, Alicia and I had our initial discussion, which went into, getting buy-in from the leadership team and then our investors, and then doing a cost analysis. I also knew that we were in a historic district, and I wanted to make sure that we were able to get the permitting and permission to install this equipment into the neighborhood, because I didn't see anyone else with solar panels in the Belhaven Heights Historic District. So I very early on submitted an application to the City of Jackson's Historic Preservation Commission, and in June of 2021, they gave us a certificate of appropriateness, which allowed me to kind of more confidently move forward with the project management of this. We did install the equipment in the early part of 2022, and I made the final payment to Solar Alternatives in June of 2022. The total cost to them for material and labor was $55,692. And then in March of 2021, our market rents at this particular property, which is all one bedroom, one baths, was $629 a month. Today, we are renting that same apartment for $729 a month. This is a 16% increase, which is significant. And I will say some of that is because we failed to raise rents in 2020 and 2021 due to COVID disruptions. And we've seen significant increases in prices of materials and insurance. And so we do feel like we're trying to offset some of those other real costs. But I do feel confident that we have earmarked $15 a month in increased rent due to the solar equipment. We are communicating that to prospects and tenants. They are valuing that, and they are choosing this apartment because of some of those benefits. So we do think that the market is educated about solar panels and want it. Things to consider that I did not understand before I started this project. I reached out to my insurance company after we had installed this equipment to get the solar equipment added to our insurance policy, and they refused to add it. So for the first year, we were self-insuring this equipment and went bare. So I do believe that because we've been through several new renewals, and it is a part of the property now, it is likely insured, but I don't really understand what a hailstorm or some kind of catastrophic act of God might have on that particular equipment. Another thing that we didn't understand in the beginning was the need for communication between the SolShare equipment and the software. And so we did not budget in a monthly hotspot or internet access, and so we have had to, for some months, pay for that. I think Allume has now taken over that expense and is incurring in a different way that's not to us. So, but I would understand that going forward. And then another thing is Alicia was amazing. She was certainly a project manager through all of this. She understood exactly what was going on downstream and upstream and helped us through some pretty significant hurdles. So her presence and passion for this project was really important in making sure that it got executed. In conclusion, I feel that our prospects and tenants know that this property has solar equipment and they value this offering, paying a rent premium to live at this property. The census data report for the median household income in Jackson is $42,330. So this particular 10-unit complex is a B- class property located in a historic neighborhood, which is federally, state, and local authorities protect. And we have a median income of $42,000. So if we can install these solar panels in this type of environment, at this type of property, feel that tenants value it and appreciate it enough to pay the $15 increase in rent, then we've been pleased with the outcome of this project and encourage others to really consider it. All right, Alicia, you're next.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to do this a little bit more from a storytelling perspective, since a lot of the really important details have been covered already. So how I even learned about the SolShare, which I think it's been covered at this point, is an Australian company. It all started with a PV Magazine article, which if you know me or have heard me present another time, that's actually how a couple of my stories have started. But I was a DOE Solar Energy Innovation Fellow with the Mississippi Public Service Commission and was just starting my day going through my inbox and read about the SolShare and how it was working to make solar accessible to apartment dwellers, which in a city like Jackson is a pretty big percentage of the population and is a big percentage of the population in many cities. So I was reading about this technology, and with it, I really saw three use cases that were interesting to me as someone who had been charged with making solar more accessible, particularly to low-income communities. So the first thing I saw was just an accessibility argument. It could make solar accessible to people who have virtually no options otherwise, and we can get into that a little bit more. The second was more of a Mississippi-specific use case, but it's becoming more of a national issue, which is utilities don't want to pay for exported solar that is uncontrolled and being exported when all the other solar projects on the grid are generating. So what I wanted to see was, could the load profile diversity of an apartment building, where maybe you have a senior or a remote worker who is home during the day, balances with maybe a more traditional worker who is gone during the day and comes home at 5 p.m. So I wanted to see how that could work together to reduce those less valuable exports to the grid. And then finally, I wanted to try to build a financial model that could work in a state that not only didn't have net metering, but also had low rates. You heard Jennifer give some of the numbers on the project in terms of the payback. To give you the context on this, Mississippi was one of those states that has avoided cost compensation for exports. So you're looking at that, 2.5 cent range, maybe 3 cents. But for the average retail rate for Entergy at the time, it was around 10.5 to 11 cents. So that's why this was a uniquely challenging project in a uniquely challenging state. Next slide, please. So a lot of these ingredients in the project have already been covered, but I think that this is going to be transferable to any location that wants to do a project like this. So the three financial pieces that made this work were, one, low-cost patient capital, which is shout out to the Mississippi Development Authority's Energy Efficiency Revolving Loan Fund. The terms of this loan is up to 10 years at 2 points below the prime rate. So at the time, right in the midst of COVID, we ended up squeaking through with 1.25% interest, which is just unheard of now. But even in this slightly higher interest rate environment, 2 points below prime is a fantastic deal. So that was a huge ingredient. The second, being the 30% federal tax credit, that's always a critical part of investment decisions, and something I should have put on the slide, but I'm glad Jennifer mentioned it, was accelerated depreciation, which is available to commercial businesses that invest in solar. And then the other thing was, this is a first of a kind project. We didn't end up being the first SolShare deployment in the US. A project in Florida beat us out by a month or two, but it was still very new in the United States. So we did get a partnership from our utility, Entergy Mississippi, to basically cover the cost of the SolShare just to try it out on an R&D basis. But then the other piece was, you need to have a team to pull off a project like this. Your average building owner has never done anything with solar, and they have a million other things that they're dealing with, like the maintenance issues and the insurance issues and all the other things that building owners have to do on a daily basis. So it's important to have someone who can project manage and keep this kind of project going, bridge all the different pieces. But also for something new like this, you need a solar installer who is willing to take a chance, a building owner who's willing to take a chance. You need to have early conversations with the utility. And of course, with the role that Allume was playing in answering the many questions that came up and helping us get through the hurdles, it really was an all hands on deck kind of effort. But I hope that the work that we've done can make it much easier for the nth of a kind projects that come after us. Next slide, please. So the impact here is really impressive considering the circumstances. Jennifer gave you the context on the average income, and I gave you some context on just the challenges of Mississippi's regulatory environment. But with all of that, we ended up with a project with just over 22 kilowatts DC of solar, one SolShare connected to 10 apartments, and all of that worked out to where Jennifer's company could be net positive, the tenants could be net positive, and a project could pencil, giving tenants savings of 10 to 20% per month. And the big thing here again is just wanting to build that replicable model, which we actually have just that I built an Excel financial model for the state of Mississippi that can be replicated to other places. So we are happy to share how we did different things and help you think through what this might look like in your state. Next slide, please. One thing I definitely want to call out is the Allume portal. As we're thinking about how we size these multifamily solar projects, it's really challenging because often the tenants are paying their own energy bills and therefore they're the only ones that have visibility into their data. One of the cool things about the Allume portal is that you can see how much energy demand there is for the whole building, and you can see that overall or on a per apartment basis. And then you can see how much solar is being delivered from the system, so how much is generated overall, how much is consumed, and how much is exported. And that could be used for a variety of purposes. It's certainly verifying the financial savings, but it can also be used for educational purposes. If you're receiving more value for using solar at the time that it's produced, as is the case in most states, talking to tenants about using things like smart thermostats or moving certain chores during the day and showing them how that can increase their savings, it's just a really cool opportunity. You can see over there about a quarter of the building's energy use has been offset, 16,000 pounds of CO2 reduction, and it's only been operating for, I guess, about maybe 2 years now, so that's pretty good. Next slide, please. So some lessons learned, the first being the product does work. I think a lot of us who work in the industry see a lot of things in the news or get emails and you wonder if the product actually works. And the answer in this case is a resounding yes. But the second thing I'll say is, you always have to be mindful about the way that you're approaching a project to maximize the benefits. And I will say in this case, this is an east-west oriented building.
And because of some penetrations on the roof, we had to go with an eastern orientation, which means a lot of our solar is being generated in the morning when people are at work. So just something to bear in mind, like for any projects that you do, making sure that you understand the patterns of the people in the building and probably prioritizing a south or a west orientation if you can is definitely something to think about. The third thing I would say, and this is particularly important for solar for all, is we have a requirement to save at least 20% on energy bills. So it may be worthwhile to have fewer apartments connected to each SolShare box, just to make sure that tenants are getting the size of savings required by solar for all. As I had mentioned in the video, the AC output limit on the SolShare, at least at the time that I was doing the project, was 16.4 kilowatts AC, which means that for the Belhaven project, each tenant is getting 2.2 kilowatts DC, 1.6 kilowatts AC, which isn't a ton, especially in a state like Mississippi with a lot of air conditioning use during the day. So that's just something to consider in your analysis if you're doing a project like this. The fourth thing I would say is, again, having an external project manager, and that could be a person, it could be an organization, just helping multifamily properties navigate this. I mean, in general, it's probably a best practice, even if you're working with single-family homeowners, to have a navigator there to help them through the many different parts of the process. But I would say that's particularly important for a project like this, just because there's some additional steps, just even like how much solar you're assigning to each apartment building and what the financial model looks like. It's a little bit more involved than just let's put solar on the roof and make sure the installer pulls a permit. Another thing is utility education and involvement. Even though this has been done across the US now several times, it's still going to be important because for many net metering or net billing tariffs, there is a residential limit, sometimes 10 kilowatts, sometimes 20. And you may have to have a conversation with the utility about how, yes, there's 22 kilowatts on this roof, but it's spread across 10 apartments. No individual apartment is getting more than the limit. And actually, Allume can set a limit for how much solar can go to any apartment at any given time to work with whatever regulations your utility has. But you're just going to need to talk to them about that. And then finally, for Solar for All, something that I'll highlight is it's really important to have low-cost capital or other incentives for projects like this in opportunity states. Like with the financial model, one thing we were trying to prioritize was because there's tenants turnover in an apartment building, you don't want your early tenants to pay for the project and then the future tenants get all the benefits with none of the costs. Like you really are trying to spread that out. So there's a lot that goes into making something like this strike all the right balances. And Solar for All funding is going to be uniquely positioned to make that a little bit easier. Next slide, please. So I've mentioned it a couple times already, but the timing could not be better for a project like this compared to when we did this back in 2022. One thing is that tax credits are more accessible and more generous than ever. So previously you had to be for-profit like Belhaven, now Vesica, to take advantage of the tax credits, but now with direct pay, if you are a nonprofit affordable housing property, you are able to claim the federal tax credit as a direct payment, which reduces some of the complexities and just gives you greater access to basically a 30% discount. And then the other thing is there are now adders for everything from using US manufactured equipment to being in an energy community, which is a community that is got a history of, like, say, having a coal plant or something like that. You can get an extra 10% for that. And there's also low-income adders, and particularly Category 3 low-income adders for multifamily housing. So a lot of opportunity to stack your tax credit up to like 60 or 70%, but certainly 40 or 50%. Renewable energy credits are also an option that can be pursued. Companies are looking to invest in clean energy and preferably clean energy with a social justice component. So monetizing those RECs is another good opportunity.
Wanted to call out community change grants. I'm sure a lot of the people on this call are working on those, but that's something that could be leveraged in with the SolShare project. And then the big one that is near and dear to my heart is Solar for All and all of the funding that's going to bring to communities. If you aren't familiar with what's going on in your state, I encourage you to go to the EPA website, see who's operating in your state, and connect with them about this because this is a huge opportunity. Next slide. Perfect. So I think at this point it's turning back over to Zareen for Q&A.
All right. Thank you. All right, we're gonna shift it to the Q&A portion now. We've had a lot of really good questions, so I'm gonna have to pick and choose a little bit. First off, some folks, a handful of folks apparently weren't able to see the video. So when we share the recording and slides from this, we will also share a link to the video that was shown earlier. And if presenters want to turn their cameras on as well, please invite you to do so during the Q&A portion as well. I'm going to start with the most asked question. Aliya, this goes to you. Are there opportunities to pair the SolShare with energy storage?
Yes, that's a great question, and the SolShare can be paired with batteries. We have done so in other parts of the world, including the UK and Australia. We have yet to do a project in the US in which we've paired with energy storage. However, the product does have the capability to support peak shaving for multifamily buildings. So honestly, we're just waiting to do a battery project.
Great. Another question to you. Does SolShare meet the Build America, Buy America, the BABA provisions for the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund and Solar for All?
So that's another great question that we are looking to also get a better understanding of ourselves. So our product is manufactured in Australia. However, there are exceptions that can be made for products that are not otherwise created in the United States. So we're looking to really communicate with the EPA and have those conversations about a waiver for our product.
I'm going to open this one up to everyone, so please jump in. Were there any unique issues that the project had to work through with Entergy, with your electric utility on interconnecting SolShare? And were there any unique issues in getting this permitted and inspected?
I can take the utility portion. So there were definitely questions about the product more from a net metering perspective than there was from an interconnection perspective, because really from the utility side of things, like it's going to operate like any commercial size solar product, except you're exporting less to the grid because there's more load diversity on the back end. But the question did arise that Mississippi does have a 10 kilowatt residential solar max. So there was a little bit of going back and forth about the SolShare's functionality and making sure that no one apartment could get a full 20 kilowatts of solar delivered to them at any period in the day. And that's something that Allume's got the functionality to handle, but also it was just having an honest conversation about the physics of it, which is that you're not going to have 9 apartments with 0 energy demand at one point and 1 that had 20 kilowatts of demand. It just wasn't going to happen probability-wise.
Okay. Was there anything on just in the inspection and permitting that anyone had to add, or that all goes smoothly? I know it could be a big barrier in some cases.
Yeah, Solar Alternatives installed this equipment, and I had a property manager working with them and making sure that the tenants knew what was going on and why people were on the roof. But I was never told that there was any issue with permitting or inspections, so I would assume none.
Yeah, excellent. A question specific, so do tenants that don't use as much electricity during the day get less benefit than tenants who use more electricity during the day?
I can take that one first. It, I think you know, there is some variability depending on location as well. So if you're in a location where there is one-to-one net metering, then no, there really isn't a significant difference in the benefits of when you use the energy because the net metering agreement will be in the tenant's name, so they would get the benefits of those credits. Now, that said, you know, if a tenant is consistently not in the building during the day, yes, more likely a tenant would benefit from being able to consume that energy when during the day, especially in locations that don't have one-to-one net metering. But what we are trying to do is trying to ensure really equal allocation for those tenants. And I mean, furthermore, back to the battery question, when it can be paired with battery is when you can continue to sort of unlock economies of scale because then you don't need multiple batteries per meter or per tenant. You can just have a single battery. The SolShare will connect that solar and provide that energy even when the sun is down.
And Aliya, there were a few questions that came in. I think this was addressed some through the presentation, but just what are the limitations of SolShare as far as the amount of solar that a unit can handle, if there are limitations there, and the number of units that it can support?
Yeah, so in terms of units that it can support, so a SolShare can connect up to 10 units, but let's say you have a building with 800 units, that would just be 80 SolShares. And Alicia also spoke to this, the capacity limit for the SolShare is 16.4 kilowatts AC. And that energy, you know, there, as she said, you know, that is about 2 kilowatts DC per meter per unit if that is connecting 10 units to the SolShare. However, if you have a 240-volt connection in which you then connect 5 units to the SolShare, each unit would be getting about 4 kilowatts of solar.
Great. And you know, I think this was addressed, but I think it's worth just circling back to. So there were some questions that came about, you know, what about states that don't have community solar programs? Does SolShare work in those? Are there any conflicts with that?
Yeah, I would say, and I think, you know, Alicia and Jennifer's input here is great too, because they did it, you know, they really did it in a location where community solar isn't available. So actually, in states where community solar virtual net metering is not available, SolShare is an incredible option because it does not rely on credits being sent to the or energy sent to the grid. It's not a billing mechanism. It's actually it's physically delivering electrons to meters for direct consumption. So that's capturing the full retail value of electricity. And it really isn't reliant on any utility policies or programming. But I'll let Alicia and Jennifer speak to that as well.
Yeah, all you really need is commercial behind the meter solar policy. So like net billing, net metering, something like that. And then I guess the other thing is you probably need third-party ownership just because the building owner owns the solar, but then is sharing it with the tenant. It's essential if you're doing like a lease or like solar surcharge on the lease, like that's probably a form of third-party ownership of the solar. And then the one other thing I would say is some states explicitly have rules against having one solar project serve multiple states and multiple provinces, and Georgia is unfortunately one of those. But I would say the majority of states do allow just some kind of net billing or net metering and that third-party ownership. So it's very cross-cutting product.
I know we're about out of time. We're going to try to squeeze one more question in. A couple of questions came in. Was there work done ahead of time to look at what tenant loads looked like? And if so, how was that done? Did you ask tenants to share their electricity bills?
We did not, because there's enough turnover in apartments that you never know. You do the analysis and then 2 months later there's a new tenant in place. So we really just looked at what could the roof handle, what could the SolShare handle, and just wanting to do this really as like kind of an R&D kind of project. But I'd say even if you're looking to do this now that it's been proven, if you're talking like 2 kilowatts DC per apartment, like it really doesn't matter how much energy you're using because that's a relatively small amount of solar. Maybe if you're doing more solar per apartment, like fewer connections per SolShare, if you have that data, that would be awesome. But I don't think that you have to because the SolShare does handle sending energy where it's needed first, but then also balancing the allocation over the course of the month according to whatever requirements you put in the platform.
Great, thank you. So apologies to questions we didn't get to. I'm sure all of our presenters today would be happy to answer questions if you have specific ones for them or are looking to do this. Thank you very much to Aliya and Jennifer and Alicia. I found this to be extremely informative, and I'm sure it was for our attendees as well. So thank you very much. And I'm going to turn it back over to Zareen to talk about some upcoming webinars that we have for you all. Thank you.
Sorry, having some technical difficulties, but I just wanted to let you know that we have a bunch of interesting webinars coming up, and you can find all of them at cleanegroup.org/webinars. So thanks again, everyone, for coming, and have a great day.